What is going on, guys? This is Miasin. So today I wanted to have kind of like a quick little discussion with you guys concerning Varudas, the final bringer of the end times. It's a weird name, it's really long for no good reason. But yet, see, Ranked monster, even though it's been out since Legacy of Destruction, we haven't really seen it being played in too many decks, and for a very good reason. I mean, again, it requires 2+ level 10 monsters, which is pretty niche. Not a lot of decks can really afford the luxury. Anyways, we will be going straight to the point with this one. It has a pretty interesting effect that reads, when your opponent activates a card or effect, hook effect, you can detach one material from discard and negate that activation. Then you can detach one material from discard, then destroy one card on the field. So in other words, you can detach 2 materials to negate and then destroy any other card or the card that you're negating. And at the start of the damage step, if this card attacks while it has a material, you can destroy one card on the field. And if this Exceed Summon card is destroyed, you can destroy one card on the field. This card really loves destroying cards on the field. And obviously, you can only use each effect of Varuda as the final bringer of the end times once per turn. Alright, so the first thing that comes to my mind is, alright, cool, we got a rank 10 version of Baron. So would this card break Yu-Gi-Oh just because it can negate stuff? And usually the answer is yes, because Omni Negates are pretty scary cards, especially if it's generic, right? You really just use 2 level 10 monsters. This card is already setting itself up to be extremely good for the future, because if we ever get a good rank 10 deck, this card is obviously going to be the go-to option for any of those decks, because you'd always want to summon a card like this over something like, unless you're going second, these cards, Super Dreadnought, Real Cannon, Super Dora, it has an effect that makes it unaffected by card effects for a turn, but I'd rather make an Omni Negate that can also destroy cards on the field. It's a little better than just summoning a Protect the Castle monster that doesn't really do much else, especially considering the fact that this card still loses to like Forbidden Chalice, Forbidden Droplet. Obviously this card still does, but you know, you'd rather trade with your opponent's cards. It just gets you a little further into your game plan. But yeah, which kind of decks can summon Varudas in the first place? Well, there's really not that many. So the Machina and the Train decks can. Dark Lord, but who plays that? And the most realistic decks, I want to say, Eldritch, if people are still playing that. And the real one is Yubel, which is going to be extremely good when the Phantom of Yubel will come out. The fusion monster, you will be seeing a lot of Yubels running around in the competitive scene. So it's not like Baron that can be played in billions of decks and decks that are super insane. So just because of that, I want to say the card is going to be just less impactful on the competitive scene, even though its effect is very comparable. And I want to say this is one of the few Omni Negates cards that has like a really nice built-in restriction, because if you detach one material to negate, you're not also destroying the card. You're really just negating and that's it. If you want to destroy a card on the field, then you got to detach an additional material, at which point you would go from 2 to 0 materials, and then you're out of negates. So it behaves pretty similarly to Borrowed Savage, as in it has a limited amount of times it can negate. This is again something else that I wanted to cover. As you can clearly see with the ranked 10 monsters, they're not necessarily the best. None of them are really good for going first. They're really just going second cards. This is pretty much the first time that we have a ranked 10 monster that you absolutely want to summon on turn 1, and obviously even going second, it's relatively decent, but it doesn't power creep the other options that we have at our disposal. Like, this is a Book of Eclipse, the Tistina divinity that defies darkness, so it's a really nice effect. And the trains are always going to see play in the train deck for obvious reasons. That's really nice, and it really reminded me of how before we had Baron, the only level 10 monster that we can summon was Leo, the Keeper of the Sacred Tree. Not necessarily the best card, doesn't really do too much. Obviously, the game used to be super slow, so a monster that you could only target on your main phase 2 was relatively okay-ish, but it's really just that this card existed to fill a void, because we had like nothing else that we could synchro into for a level 10 monster. Same thing with like Star Eater. That card was a level 11 monster that wasn't super insane. It wasn't garbage. You would still play it if you could. But once we got cards like Psychic and Punisher, I mean, that's really just the only level 11 synchro monster that I can think of that isn't garbage, that you can summon with like 2 monsters generically. This card actually does something, and it can lead to nice OTKs. And even going first, you can summon it, and if you have like no life points, a lot of decks can't really deal with it. Cards like Surgical Strike or Spectra, I want to say, are Omni Negates, quote-unquote, that are really healthy for the game, because it's relatively easy-ish to summon, but it doesn't negate everything. This card right here, it only negates cards or effects that your opponent activates in Chainlink 2 or higher. It doesn't beat Nibiru that is used correctly, because if your opponent goes Nibiru and Chainlink 1, this doesn't negate it. It has built-in weaknesses, whereas cards like Appaloosa, it doesn't really have any weakness almost, other other than the fact that it only negates once per chain. So if your opponent has like Nibiru and Ghost Ogre, then I guess he wins, or Nibiru and Veiler. But then your opponent has to have 2 hand traps to beat Appaloosa while you're comboing and making your board. Whereas cards like Spectra, not really the case. Like one hand trap is still gonna beat you. And Tri-Gate Wizard is the only Omni Negate here that really negates everything and doesn't have like any weakness, but it only negates when it's co-link with like 3 cards in total. So that's already a lot of work that you have to put into. So even though it's a Link 3 monster, it looks like it's super easy to summon. I can't think of too many decks that can really summon Tri-Gate Wizard. The Snake Eye Melodious deck was one of the few decks that was playing Tri-Gate Wizard this format, but not super generically. A lot of people aren't even playing Tri-Gate Wizard in it, but yes, it is definitely something that you can do because Zealantis can like organize all of your links to make it so that everything always co-links. But even then, even without Zealantis, it still works fine. You know, you summon Apo and then Tri-Gate below, and then you got like Nightmare Phoenix and SP Little Knight, so everything is co-linked, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, all that to say that Verudas is a really interesting card. I think it is an extremely good card, definitely should be looked into, and if your deck can't summon level 10 monsters, then this is always one of the options that you want to go into. Just like if your deck can summon level 8 Synchro monsters, Borreload Savage is always a card that you're trying to summon, or level 10 monsters for Baron. This is going to be the exact same. It's going to be the new staple that is completely inevitable for rank 10 decks. But the issue is we don't have a lot of decks that can even summon level 10s in the first place. So regardless of how good this effect is, it's very good at best, but it's not like unfair status just because it's not super generic. So in other words, I don't think this card is bad for the game whatsoever. But you guys let me know how you feel about it in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Peace.